Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Nutcracker Ballerina, and I'm going to be sipping on a little spiked seltzer. And if you enjoy this video, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you check out my Patreon page where you'll find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are Mars Black, Fire Red, Titanium White, Ultramarine Blue, Deep Yellow, and Burnt Umber, which I'll call Brown. And of course, you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, and I have a number 2 round brush. And throughout the painting process, I will refer to these as small and large. And of course, you can certainly switch those up if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying them. And down below this video, in the video description, I have a couple of additional resources for you that can be used throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you could purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the paints and the brushes and all that good stuff. So that's down there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting, so you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we are drawing an outline for our stage and our curtains. So I'm going to be using my pencil, and I'm going to give you a couple of markers, and we will connect those markers, and by the time we're done, we'll have something that resembles the outline of a beautiful winter play stage. So I'm going to come up on my left hand side about 1/4 of the way up my canvas, and to know how far that is, if you visually kind of pick your halfway mark and then go about halfway between that and the bottom of your canvas, that's going to be about 1/4 of the way. It doesn't have to be perfect, just somewhere in the vicinity. And then you're going to go about 1 inch below that, or a little ways below that, depending on the size of your canvas, and make yourself another little mark. So I have 2 marks on one side of my canvas. Then you can either use your pencil or maybe your paintbrush as a measuring tool to see how high that line is that you made. Go over to the other side, and you can make yourself a mark in about the same spot, and then just go. You can either measure the next one or just go about 1 inch below it and make another one. And then what we're going to do is we're going to connect the 2 top markers together and then the 2 bottom markers together using an arcing line. So the top ones are going to arc up and the bottom will arc down. I'm going to make it, it doesn't have to be a really big arc. I'm just going to go maybe about 1 inch higher than this. So I'm going to just kind of sketch myself a little bit of an arcing connecting line here, and it doesn't have to be a perfect line. You can see I'm just kind of sketching mine because we're going to be painting over it. You can certainly kind of manipulate it and modify it as you go, but that looks good to me. And then I'll do the same thing with my bottom marker. So I'm going to just kind of bring it in through here and then do the same thing over here. And you can see it almost looks like a very narrow oval. So something like that, and you can just kind of keep sketching it until you feel like you've got a good shape on it. Of course, you probably have an eraser too that you can certainly modify, and that looks pretty good to me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the top of my canvas. I'm going to come down the left-hand side, I would say maybe about 1/5 of the way down the canvas, or just 2 or 3 inches, make myself a little bit of a marker. I'll use something as a measuring tool to see how far down I came with that, and then I'll come down on the other side just about the same distance. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a really gentle kind of wobbly line to connect these two. So maybe something like this. And again, you can see it doesn't have to be perfect, just something on the wobbly side. Then I'm going to come in from the left-hand side of my canvas about a third of the way, make myself a little marker, and then I'm going to make myself a wobbly line from here to here. So I'm going to come down almost like loose kind of step marks. Like if a set of stairs, something like that, so nice loose ones. And then I'll do the same thing over on this side. So I'll come in maybe, you know, a third or a quarter of the way, make myself a little bit of a marker and connect that to this bottom right hand corner. So again, just some loose little wobbly lines. Nothing perfect, just some, oops, I missed my mark. No worries, I'll just bring it all the way down. And that's all we're gonna do for our outline. We'll use our large brush for the next step, so you can put your pencil away, take a little bit of a break, get your large brush out, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are painting the back of the stage, the back wall to the stage, and we're gonna be using our big brush and black paint. There is no fancy paint stroke that needs to be done for this. You're really just painting it in black. You're bringing it all the way to your pencil marks. And if you bump into your pencil marks a little bit, don't worry about it, because you'll be able to paint over. We've got a beautiful spotlight that's going to be encapsulating this whole area as well later. So just get a nice coat of black on here. You can go right up to the edge of what's going to be your curtains, and I'm just kind of pushing my brush along the edge here. So again, I'm using a bigger brush, so it might not have perfect edges to it, but I'm really okay with that. And then even down when you hit your stage, I don't need a perfectly executed line because I'm almost going to have it fading into the stage anyways. So when you get into this area, you can almost just loosely paint it. It doesn't have to be a really clean line, because again, I'm going to have it almost fading into the back edge of my stage anyways. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this beautiful layer of black paint that's going to act as our nice dark backdrop for our stage, you can wash. Actually, you don't even have to wash. You can, because we're going to use the same brush with black and a couple of other colors, so you don't have to do anything other than just take a break and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the floor on our stage. I'm going to be using my large brush, and I'm going to be using the remnants of the black that I had on the background, plus brown and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start at the top or the back of my stage and work my way to the front or the bottom of my stage. If you feel that you have too much black on your brush right now, you can certainly just take your paper towel and just wipe off a little bit of the remnants. But what you'll want to do is don't pick any more black up. You're going to just pick up brown to start. So I have black and brown on my brush right now. Then I'll transition into just a little bit of brown, and then at the bottom I'll be using some white. So it's in essence going to get lighter as it comes towards the front of the stage. I'm going to be using a left to right brush stroke, and when I get to the back edge where it hits that wall, I'm really going to just kind of lightly paint on top of it. So they almost look like they're blended together a little bit. I'm using my brush kind of on the flat, the wide side as I go across here, so I can have a wide brush stroke. And then I'm just going to kind of get them to blend in a little bit right here at the edge. And you can kind of go a little bit slower if you want to, just to kind of make sure that that blends in. And then as I come down the stage or to the front of the stage, I'm going to pick up just brown paint for kind of this middle section. Just make sure I have a nice good coat on there. And now I'm going to start picking up a little bit of brown with a touch of white on my brush as well. And you might want yours to go a little bit lighter or grayer or darker than mine. Whatever you feel is your comfort zone, it's totally fine. The brighter it is at the front or the bottom of the stage, the more it's going to look like it's kind of popping out from behind those curtains. And, you know, it's something that if you want, you could certainly do a second coat on if you want that gradient to be a little bit more smoother from the back to the front. But really, wherever your visual preference is totally fine. And then we're going to use this same brush for the next step, but you definitely will want to wash it and dry it before we go on to the next step. All right, so what I'm going to be doing for the next step is I'm doing the first layer of my curtains and the front of my stage. So the colors that I'm going to be using are red and black, and I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to pre-mix myself a dark red. So I am going to take my red paint that I have. I'm going to separate some of it because I want some real bright red for later. So I want to reserve some of that. Then what I'm going to do is the leftover red that I have here, I'm going to add a little bit of black to it. And I say a little bit because the black can really take over very quickly. So I suggest that you just use a very little bit at a time, or add a little bit at a time. And if you feel like you go too dark, you can always add some red back to it to lighten it up. But what I'm looking for is kind of like a maroon kind of color. This is going to act as my base coat for the front stage as well as the curtains. So I'm gonna go a little bit darker than what I have here. So I'm just adding a touch more black to it. So I want it to be a nice, rich kind of color. And I know that it will also get a little bit darker as it dries. So I am trying to account for that as well. And I definitely want it to be darker than my red color. So I'm just making sure that I adjust it to the darkness that I like and that I know is going to give me some good effects here. And I think I'm just about there now. So you can see I've got this dark maroon kind of color. And what I'm going to do is I am going to paint in all of these sections. So I'm going to start down here with just that red color, or that maroon kind of dark red. Oh, I have my eraser sitting there. I'm going to use this dark maroon kind of color. And when I hit the stage edge, again, not terribly concerned about a 100% clean line, because we're going to be doing all kinds of effects right along that edge later that will help to clean it up. So I'm really just kind of using my brush and letting it meet the edge, but I'm not really terribly concerned about a perfect execution at this point with a firm line, because I know that we're going to be having the edge to the stage on later. So I'm just going a little bit slower to make sure I keep my curve on there. And then if you do these nice long strokes, you will eliminate what I refer to as cut marks. And a cut mark to me is when you can see the edge of the bristle, the marks that way. So then I'm going to do this top section next. So again, I'm just using my maroon, my dark red color in through here. Doesn't have to be any specific brush stroke. I'm using a left to right brush stroke at this point. You could certainly use whatever brush stroke you want. And I'm going to go a little bit slower as I'm going towards the curtain edge here. And I'm going left to right on this particular section so I can visibly see my brush strokes. And then when I go to do this section, I'll go up and down. So that way, without having to do any real separating of the valance, I think this is called a valance, the top part of the curtain, the separating part right here, in order for me to visually be able to see where that is later, the direction of my brush stroke will help me to decipher that. So once I've got that on there, now I just need to do these little sections here. So what I'll do is you can come right up to the edge of it. You could even leave a tiny bit of a space if you don't want to lose that visual reference. some of your paint may be see-through and you might be able to see your pencil mark under there anyways, but I'm going to just kind of use this vertical brush stroke along the edges. This isn't going to matter because it's just at this spot that you want to make sure that you can see the difference between those two sections. And I'm just kind of going right along my edge, and if it overlaps a little bit and goes into the black area, that's okay. I am going for kind of a clean edge where it meets the black part because it's going to be cloth, and we're not going to have a little piece that blends it later. So you can certainly, if you can get a kind of a clean line along that edge, that's great. And you will probably see streaks, paint brush stroke streaks within your paint at this point. That's okay because we're going to be doing the highlights and the shadows on the curtains later, which will definitely help to show or to get rid of those brush strokes. So again, I'm going to be using this vertical kind of brush stroke, and if you need to or want to, you can leave that itty bitty bit of a separating edge just so you can make sure you know where that edge is. And then I'm just coming along this side to my curtain. And then we are going to be using the same paintbrush for the next step. So once you've got your first layer of your curtains and your front of your stage, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer of our spotlight. So I'm going to be using my large brush, and I'm going to be using blue paint, but I do want to forewarn you that you want to make sure your black area and your stage are dry at this point. So if they're not already dry, you know, you can take an extra long break if you'd like to, or you could fan it or blow on it, or you could do the easiest way of just take out a blow dryer and blow dry it. So it's going to be this the black area and the stage area. I think my hand was just wet. That you want to make sure are dry. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to pick up some blue paint, and it will be very vibrant when it's wet. As it dries, if you're using ultramarine blue and it does not have any white in it, it's going to be translucent. So the translucency, as it dries, this will turn out very dark, and it's going to add that shadowy coolness into our the light that will be shining on our dancer later. So this is just an effect that we're going for. So I have ultramarine blue on my brush. It's very, very vibrant here. I'm going to be bringing it all the way up to my curtain, maybe about a third of the distance, or, you know, just that center area. And then as I'm using a circular brush stroke, as I come down, I'm going to be crossing over into my stage. So I'm almost making like a big triangle section that's smaller at the top and wider at the bottom, and I'm crossing it over about halfway into my floor on my stage. And you can see as my paint is drying, it gets darker and darker. So just know that that is going to happen, and you can just account for it. If you do feel that it's not, you know, that you've got way too much paint and it's not drying darker, then you can certainly lessen the quantity of paint on your brush and just go a little bit slower, you know, just build it in layers. But you can see as it's drying, I can still detect the edge of that stage behind it, and you can still see part of the floor. And I'm going to bring it out pretty far. I want to have a couple of inches to the left and the right that don't have this in it, and then it's just going to dry. When it dries, it's going to be darker. You're going to see that black behind it. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your first layer of your spotlight on here, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are doing shadows on our fabric. So to me, my fabric is going to be my curtains and the front of the stage. I'm going to use my large brush, and the colors that I'm going to be using are black and my dark red. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to have shadows underneath the edge of here. I'm going to have shadows on the left and the right of the stage to give it a circular kind of shape. And then I'm going to have shadows in the creases or in where I feel like the ripples of my curtains are. And for me, I'm going to associate the ripple or the inside part as wherever I see a little dip down. So I'm going to have a shadowy here, 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 and then for the top part, and then coming down here, whatever little part dips in towards the stage, that'll be my shadowy kind of section. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to start with a little bit of black on my brush. I'm going to start down on the stage first, and I'm going to be on the right hand side. I'm going to just kind of tap the black in towards the stage like this, and then without washing my brush, I'm going to pick up some of my dark red, and I will get it to blend in with this with the real red, or the middle of the stage part. So something like that. Putting a little bit of that red on my brush, or the dark red I should say, on my brush, and just kind of pulling it in towards the middle of the stage. And I'm trying to keep my brush stroke in the direction of that kind of curve. I'm going to hit these two first because this one will lay on top of it. So I'm going to hit underneath here first. I didn't wash my brush. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of black paint, and I'm going to put this edge underneath here. So you can bring it right up to that curtain at this point, the top valance curtain. And then I'm going to have, this is going to be my shadowy area in through here. So I can come directly above that and kind of pull the paint down into that black paint, down into where I feel my shadowy sections are going to be. So I'm just kind of taking it at the top and just kind of rubbing it or pulling it down. I don't have much paint on my brush at this point. I just want to kind of get these soft edges. Now, without washing my brush, I am going to pick up some of that dark red to get this black area to kind of blend in just a little bit with the neighboring colors that are on each side of it. So something like this. So again, my blending color is going to be my dark red. And it doesn't have to blend 100% at this point. When we go to put those highlights on, we'll get it to blend even more, but something like this will totally work. And again, if the black is overpowering for you, probably just means that you have too much paint on your brush, so you can always wash and dry your brush. Again, I'm not washing my brush at this point, just picking up a teeny bit of fresh black on it. I'm gonna go right up along this edge here, something like that. And then I'm going to decide where I want my shadows to go. So I'm going to have one here, and then maybe one on that other side over there. So I'm going to just kind of pull down a little bit of that black, give it a kind of a soft edge up at the top, and then just kind of rub it down like this. And then I'll pick up some of that original dark red without washing my brush, just to get that black to make sure it looks like it blends in with the neighboring colors. And then I have that one last section up at the top. So again, I won't wash my brush. I'm just going to kind of pick up a little bit of new black. I'm going to decide where I want my dark areas to be. So I want one in this ripple, in this ripple, and in this ripple. So I'm going to kind of start at the top, just kind of tap in some areas where I want that darkness to go. And then I can just kind of lightly just kind of pull it down like this. Pull it down like this, almost rubbing it. I hardly have any paint on my brush right now. And then once I've got it on there, then I can pick up that dark red and get this to blend in with the neighboring color. So I'm just kind of making sure I've got it coming all the way down to that edge, something like this. Make sure that you've got a good second coat on that particular area. So something like this. And then I need a little bit more of that dark red to get it to blend in over in through here. I had a little bit of black remnants still on my brush, so I was able to manipulate that in there. And then we are going to be using the same brush for the next step, but you'll want to wash it and dry it before we do that. So just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are putting the highlights on our fabric, so the curtains and the front of the stage. I'm going to be using my large brush. I'm going to be using mostly red, but I'll also use some of that dark red, and if I want to, a little bit of yellow as well. So the yellow might work as a super bright kind of highlight. But I do want to forewarn you, the paint will get darker as it dries. So as you're doing these highlights, if they're nice and bright when it's wet and you like it, wait till it dries and you might want to pop on a little bit more. And conversely, if it's too bright for you as you're painting it, don't worry, it'll get darker as it dries. So I'm going to start with just red paint on my brush. I'll do this area first. I'm going to tackle the center of the front of the stage, something like this. And again, not terribly concerned about the edge because we're going to tackle that in a minute. And then once I've got that center area, then I'm going to pick up my original dark maroon color and get it to blend in with that neighboring shadow. And if you feel like you have too much paint on your brush, like I felt like I had too much paint, I just wiped it off on my paper towel. And again, I know that this is going to get darker as it dries, so if my blend isn't perfect right now, I'll give it a minute, let it dry, and then see if I need to do anything additional after it has dried. So I'm just kind of getting it on here for now, making sure it blends in a little bit with that neighboring shadow, and then I'm just going to let it do its thing. While it's drying, I'm going to go on to the other areas. So I'm picking up some of my red, just red paint, and I'm going to add it to the highlight areas, which are we did the shadows. This is going to be the in-between areas. So something like this. And these are ripply, so they could have a little bit of a highlight along those edges to them too. So you can have fun with this. You'll see the magic of the red as it's drying because it really is translucent, and as it starts to dry, it gets these beautiful tones in it. It's not all one color. It ends up taking on the colors that are underneath. So red is easy to blend on top of a dark surface. So you just put your really thicker paint where you want it to be the brightest, and then you just kind of rub it out into the neighboring areas, and it usually is just really on the simpler side to do. I didn't even pick up any of my maroon color on that one because it was easy enough to just blend with the red itself. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I've got my brightest area maybe in through here and in through here, maybe a little bit on the edge. And then if you feel like you have too much paint, just kind of wipe it off on your paper towel. And then I'm just going to kind of blend this red out to the neighboring areas. And again, if you don't feel like you have to pick up any of that original maroon color, then don't. Just kind of work with the red if you're feeling comfortable with it. I'm going to put a little bit down the edge of here, and then I'll pull it a little bit up into the underneath that valance area. And again, I'm going to kind of just let this dry as I'm going on to the next section, and I might come back and add a little more pop to it if I need to, but right now I'm just going to kind of move on to my next section. Yeah, I like building these highlights with the red. I like watching it dry. I like watching paint dry. That's the strange thing about this is you get your fun spots that really get you going, and for me it's watching red paint dry when it's on a dark surface. So again, my up bumps are going to be where I put my my heaviest red. So I've got my heaviest red in through here, something like that. I'll do the same thing over here. And again, this is the edge of the fabric, so you could put a tiny little bit of a highlight along the edge if you want to. And again, that's my brightest. And then I'm gonna just start working that into the surrounding areas and just kind of going back and forth until I've got my highlights as bright as I want. And again, as it's drying, if you feel that you want to add more or you want to come in with some of that maroon kind of color, feel free to do so. But you should be able to accomplish most of it just with this red. And then if you wanted a really bright kind of, not in your face, but definitely a brighter kind of highlight, you could certainly pick up a teeny bit of that yellow. And that's gonna almost, let's see, where can I do it? I think this is dry enough in through here. That's gonna add almost a lighter tone to your red without doing anything really difficult. So the red should be pretty dry underneath it if you do want to add that yellow to it. But if you do, that definitely adds a bit more of a pop to the highlighted areas. And you just kind of work it until you feel like it is time to let it dry. And I think this is almost ready for me. If I wanted to, yeah, it's still a little wet. So I think it's going to dry the way that I want it to. But if once it's fully dry, if I want to add a little bit more, if you want to add a little bit more of that punch around the edges, you can certainly add a touch of that yellow. I think I'm going to add a tiny bit of yellow right in through here. And then let's see, what are we going to do for the next step? We're going to actually switch brushes to our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your highlights on your fabric, you can put the large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer to the gold decorations on the front of the stage. So I'm going to be using my small brush, and the colors that I'm using are brown, yellow, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to pre-mix myself the base coat for my gold. I know that gold is usually kind of yellow and it has the brownish hues in it, so that's where I'm going. I'm going to make myself my own golden color. So I'm going to be using brown and yellow and just a touch of white. So the white is going to help to make it so it's not so see-through. So you want this to kind of be almost on, I don't want to call it the greener side, but more of like a coppery, not copper, more gold. I mean, just like a metallic-y color. I'm going to bring this close to the camera. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but something like that, where it's almost maybe even like a little greenish hue to it. And then once you've got the color that you want, make enough of it so that way you don't have to pre-mix it again. And I'm going to be making just decoration. So I'm going to do a trim along the edge of my stage. So for me, I have a shaky hand, so I'm going to brace myself on either my canvas or my easel as I do this. So I'm resting my hand on my canvas, and I'm probably not going to talk too much as I do this, so I can try and get it to be on the smoother side. And again, if it's not super smooth, it's okay. A little wobble never hurt anybody. It's a painting, it's not a photograph. So you can certainly labor over this for as much as you want. You can see I just kind of switch from left to right, whatever side I'm feeling I want to start from. I keep reloading my brush to make sure that I have enough paint on my brush. We are going to do a little highlight and shadow on this later, so that will also help to clean up any edges if you don't get it as perfect as you want to. So once I've got my edge on here, you can certainly sit and manipulate it and kind of modify it and reshape it as much as you want to. Yeah, this is a great color. All right, and then once I've got that on there, I'm going to make myself 2 more rows of kind of a long curved line similar to this in through here. So if you want to just kind of mark yourself for good spacing, you can just kind of make a couple of marks, something like that. That way you know that you've got kind of good spacing. And I'm going to bring these maybe to like half of the distance, so maybe to the quarter mark and a quarter mark. But again, it doesn't have to be exactly as mine. I think I'm going to start right about here. So I'm starting maybe about a half of an inch to an inch away from the edge of my stage, and I'm watching my stage and using that as my visual guide for this curved kind of line. And then you can just sit here and modify it as much as you want. I think I want mine a little bit thicker and just something to make sure that it has that slight curve to it. So I just, I did my initial line, and then I'm gonna just come back and just kind of tweak it until I feel like it's the way that I want it to be. So that's a little bit of a curve. Maybe drop it down just a little bit into here. This is where, if you are a perfectionist, it's tough to just do this step and move on. So some people might, I guess you could have used your pencil to pencil it in if you wanted to, but I'm just kind of one of those go for it kind of artists. So if you'll notice that I a lot of times just let happen what's gonna happen. And that's my shtick. If it's not perfect, I am totally okay with that. I'm not going for photorealism here. I'm just going for a fun painting that's going to make me happy while I am painting it. And then I'm just going to continue and make these lines whatever width I want them to be. So mine are probably about a quarter of an inch wide. And then once I have them on here, I am going to be, and again, the shadow and the highlight that we do later will help to correct, or if one of your lines is a little bit wider than the other, or one of them is a little more wobbly than you want, you can make little adjustments when we go to do the highlights and the shadows. And then I'm going to do 2 ball button kind of things on the edges of here. This is meant to be an interpretive kind of stylistic thing of what some of the Nutcrackers wear for their clothing. So this was just my take on how can we decorate this stage to give it the feel of the Nutcracker without kind of going overboard and having to paint a full-on Nutcracker. So I thought that it was kind of a cool idea. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm trying for similar type size balls, but they're not going to be perfect, again, because I'm just eyeballing this. I'm eyeballing my balls. So you can certainly make yours. You could decorate this really, there's lots of different styles for the Nutcrackers, for what they wear and stuff. So I just did kind of the most common one that I have in my head. And then I'm going to do 2 shoulder pads, because a lot of the Nutcrackers have little shoulder pad things or decorations on their shoulders. So I'm just going to make myself a little bit of a kind of a rectangle in through here that has a little bit of shape to it. So maybe bring it in with a little bit of a curved line there. Just paint it in with that golden color that you have. And then I'll put little tassels on the end of it. And remember, this is just the first layer. So it might be see-through, it might be streaky, it might not be exactly as you want it at this point. Again, don't worry, because you're going to do, we're going to have the highlights and the shadows and all the other, maybe we'll do another little layer on it. And then I'm just doing these little tassels at the bottom. And then I'll come to the left-hand side and do the same thing. So I'm coming in maybe about an inch, inch and a half, and coming down maybe an inch, inch and a half, and just making myself that similar shape on both sides. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, because maybe we're at a different angle and we're not totally looking at it straight on. So don't worry about those kind of little details. The whole idea here is just to have it interpretive and enjoy the process. And then we are going to be using the same brush, the small brush, for the next step. So after you've got the first layer of these decorations on, you can wash and dry the small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first step of our ballerina. So I'm going to be using my small brush, and we're in essence going to be just creating her figure with the color of skin. So your skin color can be whatever color you would like it to be. I usually go with whatever is closest to mine because it's an easy reference for me to do it. But you could do yours whatever color you'd like. So how I'm going to create a skin color is I'm going to use my white. So I'm just going to separate some white out. I want to save some white for later, but I got white. I'm going to add a touch of red, a touch of yellow, and a touch of brown. And I'm just going to spin it around. And whatever color I get, I say, do I want it lighter? Do I want it darker? Do I want more yellow in it? Do I want more brown in it? Whatever you want to do. Like what I do is once I've got a color, I can take that paint and put it right up to my skin and I can say, oh, that's too light. I need that to be darker. So I'm going to add a little bit more of my red and my yellow and maybe a little bit more of my brown. And see if I get it a little bit closer. So I just kind of keep tweaking it until I feel that I've got it pretty similar to the color that I want. So for me, again, I go pretty similar to my skin color, but you could certainly go to your skin color or your neighbor's skin color or your significant other's skin color, whatever you'd like is totally fine. And I am just kind of continuing to tweak mine until I get it into that color that I want. Sometimes it takes a little while to get it there. And then once you have the color that you want, what we're going to do is we're going to create a stick figure to start, which everybody says that they can do stick figures, right? Or they can't do stick figures. I forget how that saying goes. But right now I've got myself a color that's pretty similar to my own skin. So I am going to say that I've got my color all nice and ready. And then how I'm going to do this is I'm going to make a vertical line that's going to have a little bit of a curve to it. So I'm going to give you a couple of markers, and depending on the size of your canvas, you might put yours a little bit in a different spot. But my first one, I'm going to have kind of in the center of my stage. So left to right, it'll be about the center, and then from top to bottom, almost center, maybe a little bit higher than the center, so maybe about a third of the way down. And I'm just going to make myself a little dot. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come straight up, up, until I am about halfway between the top of my canvas and the bottom of my canvas. And I'm going to go to the left just a little bit. So for me, it's about a ½ inch to maybe 3/4 of an inch to the left of that. But again, depending on the size of your canvas might dictate a little bit differently. And then I'm going to connect these two. I know that in the position I want, her leg is going to be pretty straight. So my curve is going to be at the top half a little bit. So I'm going to kind of just start at the top, and I'm going to have a little bit of a curve, something like that, and then just kind of come straight down and just meet the bottom. So then what I'm going to do, about halfway from the top to the bottom, I'm going to put a leg that's going to go, or a line that's going to be slightly up at an angle, and it's going to be about the distance of the bottom half, or half of this line. So you could in essence take and say, okay, this is half. I'm going to measure it with my brush, and then just kind of do this and make yourself a little bit of a mark. And then just connect that at a slightly angled line. So something like this. And again, if it's not perfect, you can always adjust it later. So now I have two legs in an easy kind of fashion. And then what I'm going to do, this is going to be her head, but I want to come down a little bit, maybe about a ½ of an inch to an inch. And this is going to be where her shoulders are. So I'm going to make myself a little bit of a horizontal kind of angled line, similar to this leg here. And I'm going to give her an arm that's almost about the length of this leg. So you can kind of, again, measure like that, measure like this. It's going to be maybe a little bit less of an angle, maybe more horizontally. I need to give myself my measurement again. And this goes to the tippy tips of her fingers. So if you just went shoulder to wrist, it wouldn't necessarily be as long as that, but this is to the tippy fingers. And if you're scared, just make it a little bit shorter to start. And then I'm just gonna connect. I have wet paint on my hand. I'm trying to avoid getting it everywhere. So I'm just gonna kind of do something like that. And then I'm gonna do an arm going up. So my arm is going to be kind of vertical, maybe a little curve at the top, and it's going to be about as long as this one from shoulder to there. So something like this. And again, you could kind of use, you could use a pencil, you could use, you know, any other kind of utensil or tool to get these initial lines on here. Then I'm going to give her an oval head, and it's going to be kind of tipped a little bit to the side. So something like this. And it doesn't have to be really large, just kind of get an oval type shape on there. And mine is tipped a little bit. And then I need to give her a little bit of shape. So for me, I'm going to start with the torso because that's kind of the easiest place for me to do it. I'm going to give her a rear end. So from here, I bring this out a little bit, and then I'm going to curve it up towards the shoulder. So I'm going to go something like that. I'm going to color that in. So again, I'm just using my skin color that I created. Then I'm going to give her the rest of this right hand side. So again, from the shoulder, I'm going to come down, give her a little chest right in through there. Well, that might be a little bit larger than I wanted, but that's all right. And then we'll go in through here, color that in. I'm going to give her a leg, so she needs a little bit of a thigh. The knee is about halfway, so I'm going to give her a little bit of a thigh. This is going to be covered by a beautiful skirt, so if yours doesn't come out perfect, don't worry about it. So a little bit of a thigh. She has a little bit of a calf, something like this, because all ballerinas, not all, but a lot of ballerinas have these major calf muscles, something like that. And this is her little foot. So this is going to be her pointy toe right in through there. And then she's got her heel of her foot, something like that. And if you need to extend it, because mine ended up a little bit narrow. And then I'm going to do this bottom leg in through here. So again, I've got a kind of a thigh coming down about midway. I've got a little bit of a calf somewhere. Oh, that's a big calf. That's all right. We get to hide anything that we want with the beautiful skirt, something like that. And then I have her foot, which is going to be pointed. So I'm just going to see maybe her heel on the left hand side. So something, a little bump in through here will suffice. And then I can curve out that front little part of her foot if you want it to. Something like that. And now I need to form her arms. So these are her shoulders in through here. Again, we've got kind of the underside of the arm, something like this. The elbow would be about mid-arm, something like that. Then I have a little bit of a forearm, something like that. And then her hand, I'm just going to put a little thumb on here. And if you find that it's a little, I think mine's a little bit long, I'm going to move her elbow up a little bit, something like that. And of course you can certainly sit here and manipulate it all you want. I think that looks pretty good. I might shave off her finger. We'll see what it looks like with her dress on in a minute. So on this one, I am going to just bulk out kind of her bicep area in through here, just to make sure that it meets that stick figure shoulder a little bit. Her elbow is going to be maybe a little bit higher than the top of her head. Something like that. She's got a little forearm. So I'm really just widening the line where I feel like that extra muscle would be. Something like that. And then for her hand, I've got her maybe just a little bit wider here. And then I think I'm just gonna put a couple of little lines for her hands. Oh, I don't really like that hand. Hold on. Let me pull my black back out here just to narrow it. Yeah, there we go. And then I need to give her a neck too. Can't forget the neck. So all I really am going to do for the neck is just kind of widen this so it naturally goes into that shoulder area. And that's all I'm going to do for my first layer of my ballerina. We are going to use the small brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing the stage, the front of the stage. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to be using my gold color, yellow, white, and black. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with black paint, and I'm going to give myself some shadows. So I'm just taking my black paint and I'm underlining these two stripes like this. I'm thinking that my light source is up somewhere, so I'm going to put my shadows below these objects that I feel are three-dimensional. So I'm going to put just a little black line underneath them, which is going to give them dimension. And then I'm going to do it underneath the little ball edges that I have. And I can honestly say that I really think that this stage part is pretty. I don't know what's making me really like this a lot, but I like the deep reds in it. And I know a lot of people like the play, the Nutcracker, so hopefully this gives a fun interpretation of the feel of it. So there we go. I've got my black underneath there, and then I'm going to put, same thing, I'm going to do a black outline underneath the edge of the stage right in through here. So just black paint. And when you're doing these kind of long lines, if you want to, I use a lot of paint on my brush when I do this, so it gives me a fluid kind of brush stroke. I reload my brush often, so that way I can get my brush to go pretty darn far with the paint on it, and I have a lot of paint on it. And then if you want your lines to be even skinnier or have more control over them, you can add a touch of water into your black paint, and that'll make it like an ink consistency. I'm going to put some shadows underneath some of these tassels too. Something like that, just again to give it a little bit more dimension. I'm going to put some over in through here, and then I will wash and dry my little brush, and I'm going to put my highlights on. So my highlight is going to be at the top of these objects, and I'm going to be using yellow and white. So I just have yellow and white on my brush, and I'm going to have this kind of on the looser side. I don't necessarily need it to be a firm line because I know that this object might have a little bit of a curve to it. So I'm really just lightly kind of dusting this highlight on here so it's not a super clean line. And then I'll put a little bit at the top of these balls. I'm going to add just a touch more white to my brush. So something like that. And again, you can really make them as bright as you want or as subtle as you want. The brighter they are, the more it's going to speak to the lights being on somewhere in the theater for the spectators or for you to see the actual play. And then if you need to or want to, you can pick up some of that original gold color to get these to blend in a little bit more, or if you had any areas that needed a second coat from the gold, so you can certainly pick up that gold paint and just make sure that you've got any areas that weren't fully painted. You could certainly hit them with a second layer of the gold. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my little highlight on the top of this stage. I think I want it brighter in the center area, so I have more of the white on my brush here, yellow and white, something like that. And then as I go over towards the edges of the stage, maybe I'll make it a little bit darker, just to give the front of the stage the most highlight. So again, I am going yellow and white, but maybe a little bit of gold over here too. And then same thing over here. And of course you can utilize this step to finalize any of those little edges that you want. I just made my stage edge grow a little bit, but that's all right. Gonna do that over here too, just to make sure it remains kind of consistent. And I'm using my kind of a loose sketchy line. That looks nice. And then I'm gonna add just a touch over on these little tassel-y things too, the little shoulder pads. Just make sure that they've got a little bit of dimension to them, so a little bit on that edge. And then we're going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your stage decorations all nice and finalized, you can wash and dry this small brush and your finger. just painted with my finger a little bit there. You can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I am putting the dress and the shoes on my ballerina. So I'm going to use my small brush and I'm going to be using white and red paint. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with a little bit of white paint on my brush and I'm going to put the dress into shape, the dress and the shoes into shape, and then we will give them a little bit of dimension with pink, which we will make with our red and white. So I'm going to have, first I'm going to start with the skirt part that comes off of her leg. So I am going to go just behind her knee and I am going to be kind of outlining the top of her leg, something like this, and I'm going to bring it back into the back side of her leg or her rear end. And then I'm going to bring this in a swooping motion. So something like this, it's going to go in front of this leg like this, and then just about maybe where the knee is or a little bit above the knee, I bring it like this, and then I'm going to do a lot of wiggly lines in order to make the flow of the fabric. So something like that. I'm going to do it like this, and if you can see through it a little bit, that's awesome, because a lot of these ballerina dresses, they're made of translucent type material, so that's great. I just want it to be a little bit thicker at the top with that white paint, so so it shows that maybe there's more highlight on it from the stage lights and stuff. And we'll be adding a little bit of pink to it in a minute, but right now I'm just kind of getting the flow of it, something like this. Maybe it's a little bit more flowy at the bottom. And you could connect all these bottom edges. I just really want mine to have a lot of movement to it, so I'm just making it fluffy like that. Then I'm going to put almost like a halter kind of top on her. So I'm going to put a little bit of white in through there and in through here. Bring it down in front of her neck like this. I'm going to bring it over here to cover her mid area and through here. And I'm just using white right now. And then I'm just going to bring this down her torso. And I am bringing it down to this line here, but I'm using less paint so I can still kind of see that line a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that white paint to just kind of put my shoes in place. So I'm really just putting a little bit of white on the tip, maybe on the heel, and then if you want it to cross up her leg, I'm just putting a little bit of white crossing up her leg. Same thing over here. I've got a little white tip for the ballerina slipper. Something like that, a little bit on her heel, and then you can do a couple of little white lines. I'm going to put pink as an accent color in a minute, but I'm just really kind of using that white to have it very visible, so something like that. And then I'm going to use my small brush with white and a touch of red, and I'm going to make myself like a pink color. So once I have that pink color, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the inside of the dress on the other side of this leg. So if my dress comes up like that on that leg, it's going to come down the other side of this leg here, something like this. And I'm going just past her knee with this pink color. And you want this to be pretty evident that it's different from the white. So if yours doesn't end up dark enough, maybe add a little bit more red to it, and that'll make it a little bit darker. Or you could even add like blue to it. That'll make it a little bit darker as well. I need a little edge underneath here. That'll be on the back side behind this leg in through here. And again, you know, maybe you want your dress to be of a different color. I'm sure in the play they had different sections of the play that had different colored dresses, so you can certainly utilize that. And then I'm going to use a little bit of that pink and just kind of almost streak it into the front section of the skirt, but I really want to make sure that I maintain the top of that skirt with a lot of white on it. And if you can get it to be see-through, excellent. I'm going to put a little hue of the pink on her belly area. The white to me that I'm using, I just put a little bit more white on my brush, is really being utilized as a highlight for this skirt. So in my head, the dress is pink, and I'm utilizing the white to accent where the lighting is coming from on the stage. So again, you can really have fun with this and make it as dimensional as you want. And then I'm going to put a little bit of pink in my shoes. So just a teeny tiny bit is going to add a little bit of a pink accent to my shoes. And again, yours could be all pink if you wanted them to be, or have that little bit of a highlight. And then we're going to use the same small brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing the little details on our ballerina. So this is going to be the rest of her skin, her face, her hair. It's really just a bunch of tiny little details. So I'll be using black, red, white. I'm going to use my original skin color and maybe add to my skin color to make it a little bit darker. So how I'm going to do this is I'm first going to be putting on some shadowy areas, so like maybe her armpits, maybe underneath this skirt in through here. So I'm going to take my skin color that I have made and make a little darker. So you can take maybe a little bit of brown and a little bit of red. Oh, I didn't say I was going to use brown. I'm using brown too. And just make it a little bit darker. Maybe a little yellow. Don't know if I said that either. So skin color, darker. And then once I've got it just a shade darker, you don't need it much different. Just a little bit will do. I'm going to put somewhere I think that there would be shadow. So I think there would be a little bit of shadow underneath her skirt. So I'm going to put a little darker area of skin underneath her skirt, maybe right in through here on the knee kind of area, or just underneath there. I think I want mine just a little darker. I'm adding just a tiny bit more brown to it. Really want it evident. So I'm making mine just a teeny bit darker here to make sure that you can, yeah, there we go. So you can see it, there we go. And I suppose if you wanted underneath some of the legs on the other side of where the light would be, that would be great. So something like that. I think I'm going to put some in her little armpits here to make those definitely look like there's some contour to them. You could even put a little on her anywhere that you want muscles, but she's just a really teeny tiny ballerina in our painting, so you don't really have to do a whole heck of a lot to make it look dimensional. So again, I'm just putting a little bit in where her underarm would be, maybe just a little bit darker in through there. I guess you could just pick up a touch of brown if you needed it to go a little bit darker. And then I'm going to put some on the back of her neck, or the neck where it's kind of meeting her dress in through here, something like that. And then maybe, let's see, I think that's all I really need for the shadowy areas on her skin. So then I'm going to put some hair on her. Or actually, let's put a nose and a mouth on her first. So I've got my skin color. The darker skin color, I just picked up some of my lighter skin color, and I'm going to give her a little nose. So this is going to be about halfway down the face, and it's just going to be a tiny little bump out, maybe like a little triangle somewhere in through there. And then I'm going to give her a little bit of a chin. So something like that. And again, just little tiny details. They don't need to go overboard here. So now she has a nose and a chin. Now I'm going to give her some hair. So I'm just going to wash and dry my little brush. And I'm going to start with some black and brown just to kind of give it the profile of where I want the hair to go. So from my experience, a lot of ballerinas pull their hair up. So we're going to have our hair in like a little bun. So I have brown and black on my brush. And I'm going to just pull it down a little bit. Maybe she's got a little ear in through here. Something like that. And that gives a good profile to where I want my hair to go. And then I'm going to add a touch of white to my dirty brush to start where I want like a little bun to happen on her hair. So I think I'm going to have mine up in through here. And again, you can manipulate this whatever way that you want to. I'm going to put a little highlight on the top of her head. And then maybe a little of that brown color in her bun. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to wash and dry my little brush so I can give her some facial features. So I'm going to use red for her mouth, and it's so subtle. I'm just somewhere between her nose and her chin. I'm just going to put a little tiny red marker right in through there. Going to wash my brush so I can put on a little bit of an eye. So I'm just going to put black and brown on my brush, and really it's just going to be a little slit or a little mark for the eye. So something in through there. And then I want to put some little highlights or something on the face so it doesn't look too flat. So I'm going to give her a little rosy cheek. So I'm actually going to use some of my pink that I used for my dress, the red and the white, and just give her a little blush on her cheek, something like that. That looks cute. And then a little dollop of white on the tip of her nose. So that'll give her a little highlight on the tip of her. I think I just got paint on my nose. A little tiny, little itty bitty dot to indicate that there is some light shining on her cute little ballerina nose. If you want on a chin. And then now it's just all about doing little tweaks. If you want any little shadows or highlights anywhere else, maybe a little highlight on her ear or a little dark spot in the middle of her ear. And you just kind of keep having fun with getting those little details on there. But that's all the little details I'm going to do. I will use this small brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're putting the reflection of the ballerina on the floor. So I'm going to use my small brush, and the best tip I can give you here is don't use a lot of paint. Don't worry about it looking like a mirror image. This is just meant to almost be like a foggy kind of reflection that's just giving the information that the floor is kind of shiny. So you can use whatever colors you've used in the ballerina. So I'll use my skin color, I'm going to use a little white, I'll use a little pink, and really my reflection is only going to be part of her bottom half of her body because we only have this little tiny space to do it. And the reflection can be skewed, so it can be small where it's touching the ballerina right here, but as it goes towards the edge of the stage, it could get larger or shift left to right depending on where the viewer is and stuff. So I'm going to start with a little bit of my original skin color, and you could even put a touch of water into your paint. That will help to give you control. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to just dab it on my paper towel so it ensures that I don't have too much paint on my brush. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go directly below this, the little foot, and I'm going to just kind of gently kind of put myself a little bit of a reflection of that leg. I have this one over here, so I'm just going to kind of give the idea that it starts right in through here. I think I need a little bit more paint. I'm going to have my skirt kind of flowing, so maybe I'll pick up some of that pink too to give the impression that the of this little skirt area. So something like this. And then I'm just going to kind of wiggle it out to give a little bit of this skirt over in through here. Again, I'm not looking for it to be a mirror image. I really just want the viewer to understand that this floor is pretty shiny and this is a little bit of a reflection of our dancer above. You can use a touch of white if you want to just add a couple of these little pops of highlight. You can see I just did a little curve in through there to give the impression that it is in fact the reflection from this. It's tough to go backwards, to go in the reverse direction, but if you can master it, or at least give the idea of the similar colors and a similar kind of pattern of movement and area, then that's going to help to sell the story that this is a reflection. And then we are going to be using our big brush for the next step. So once you've got some semblance of a reflection on in here, you can put this small brush away. Yeah, there we go. You can put the small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the step that's going to make this all magical and make it glow and everything. We're going to put the spotlight coming down from underneath the curtains. So I'm going to be using my large brush and I'm going to be using blue and white paint. So I'm actually going to pre-mix myself darkish light blue. It doesn't make sense. So I'm going to use my blue paint and I'm going to add just a teeny tiny bit of white paint to it. I know that, again, this paint, blue, on my black background, you can see it would almost disappear if there's no white in it. And I want you to be able to see it a little bit, so I'm adding just a teeny tiny touch of white paint to my blue. And you can really play with the intensity of this as you see fit. If you want yours a little bit lighter or a little bit more visible, you can certainly keep tweaking it and adding more white to it. But I do not want to use a lot of paint, and I don't want it to be too white. So I definitely, this is kind of in the color way that I'm going. So once I've got the color that I want, then I'm going to take my super dirty paper towel home. This should be its own piece of artwork itself, my towel at the end of my painting journey. And I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to wipe it off on my paper towel. You can always add more. It's really tough to take away. And if you're doing this and you're like, oh, it's not flowing the way that I want to, you can add a touch of water to your paint mixture just to get it a little bit on the thinner side. But you do not need a lot of paint, and you can always add more as you see fit. I want mine to be the lightest or have the most paint up at the top. So that way it gives the illusion that that's where the light is coming from. And then as it comes down onto my ballerina, it kind of dissipates and it becomes more faint, but you'll still be able to see it. I'm going to bring the light all the way to the stage floor. It's going to kind of follow that same shape that we did with the original. And if you want to, I am going to do a little bit on my ballerina, but I'm also going to make it not so heavy on her so she still kind of stands out. So here I go. I've got my blue paint on my brush, and know that it will turn a little bit darker as it dries. I'm going to start up at the top. I'm going to go right up to the edge of my curtain, something like that. And I'm going to be using a circular type motion like this. And you don't want to overwork it, because if you do, you might end up with these weird little outlines of where you've lifted the paint off of the canvas a little bit. So just kind of start slow. Again, it will dry darker than it is when it's wet. And I almost want it to have this like smoky kind of look to it, even though there's not smoke in the theater, but maybe all of the different air waves from the different ventilators and stuff would cause the light to kind of move a little bit. And then as I'm getting closer to her, I just want to make sure she's dry, and she is in fact dry, so I can lightly put a little bit of this on and around her as well. I hardly have any paint on my brush right now, but because I'm using this firm bristle brush, I'm really able to manipulate and keep moving this paint around and using the little remnants that are within my brush itself to create this really cool illusion. And then you can continue to add more if you wanted it to be lighter, or have more of that effect up at the top. You can certainly add a little bit more. And then we have one tiny little step left to go, and it's going to be with your small brush. So once you've put your beautiful spotlight on here, you can put this large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. I think I'm going to sign this one in the bottom left. I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to use black paint. I do my initials, but you could certainly do your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like to be your identifying mark. It's fantastic. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a pretty nutcrackery ballerina, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.